November 15th, 2018. John Allen Chau set out on a journey to a mysterious island, but he would never return.
It is illegal to go within 5 nautical miles of this island because the inhabitants are known for aggressive behavior against outsiders.
North Sentinel Island, home to the world's most isolated tribe, surviving thousands of years untouched, undisturbed.
This tribe believes in total isolation. It will not tolerate a stranger.
A destination John would come to consider Satan's last stronghold.
He said that he didn't want it, but he was willing to.
Chilling diary entries recorded the 26-year-old's last days.
I'm scared, he writes, watching the sunset, and it's beautiful, wondering if it will be the last sunset I see.
What was John's fatal mistake?
Now, I don't know about anyone else, but with someone else's tribe's religion sounds like one of the worst ideas.
And why was he willing to risk his life?
Because of a superiority complex, because he just couldn't leave these people alone. It costed him his life.
We pieced together the puzzle of North Sentinel Island, a place where time stands still.
It was incredibly dangerous for him and foolhardy thing to have done, but even more dangerous for the Sentinelese themselves.
Stay with us for a journey into the unknown. From a young age, it was clear that a comfortable life was no match for John Allen Chau's adventurous spirit. A psychiatrist father, an attorney mother, a cozy childhood with his 2 siblings in Vancouver, Washington. Undoubtedly all the more enchanted by the white-capped mountains and deep evergreens of the Pacific Northwest. What more could a boy ask for? Well, when it came to John, a lot. From a Robinson Crusoe book about a sailor shipwrecked on a deserted island that he found in his father's study as a child, to the survivalist literature he engaged with later on, John dreamed of journeys across unfamiliar landscapes and interactions with strange, even hostile cultures. And his interests were all the more solidified by his belief in an almighty power guiding him. See, being raised in a Pentecostal household and growing up attending Vancouver Christian High School gave John a devout faith in God. And it was during these formative years that he took part in his first missionary trip to Mexico, which, according to the homily he gave upon returning, awarded him with a new perspective on travel.
In John 14:15, Jesus tells us, "If you love me, you will obey what I command." And one of the commands that he gave us was in Matthew 28:19-20. He says, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you."
This newfound interest in religious work led John to the Joshua Project, a missionary database where he first learned about a mysterious tribe, the Sentinelese. At the time, the website suggested that Christians pray to earn the trust of the Sentinelese people and live among them, as they need to know that the Creator God exists and that He loves them and paid the price for their sins. And just like that, John knew what his purpose in life was. He was going to visit the Sentinelese, teach them about Jesus, and in turn, save their souls. But who were these people John was so adamant on saving? The Sentinelese are an indigenous tribe that live on North Sentinel Island, a piece of paradise located across the Bay of Bengal and a part of India's Andaman Islands. However, the inhabitants of the island hardly know they're a part of anything.
Its people, the Sentinelese, have probably never even heard of India or any other country in the world.
And that's because the Sentinelese are one of the last remaining nearly uncontacted tribes in the world, meaning that while the 20 square miles of North Sentinel Island might be equivalent in size to Manhattan, and the landscape may be indistinguishable from the setting of an all-inclusive, the island is unlike any location that exists in modern times. Instead, the Sentinelese stand as a relic to times past. They speak a lost language, have yet to pursue agriculture, and according to genome studies, have been around for at least 30,000 years. And from a modern perspective, well, it's clearly an existence that's too bizarre for most of us to fathom.
They are the last people on Earth to remain untouched by modern civilization.
They don't know about iPhones or cars or anything like that.
So isolated that they haven't even discovered yet. And the closest things they have to is bow and arrows.
The people of North Sentinel Island have made the choice to live in isolation from the outside world, and they're known to defend this right fiercely. Yep, the Sentinelese have built quite the reputation for themselves, leading their home to top lists of
places you should never go,
as well as earn cautionary titles of
the most dangerous island on the planet.
It's the most dangerous island in the world,
the most scariest island on Earth.
And unfortunately for intruders, let's just say interactions with the tribe have historically lived up to the hype.
If you go anywhere near this island, the Sentinelese will hunt you down and you if you don't leave.
Anytime Western civilization has attempted to make contact with this island, they've been met with waves and waves of attacks.
And they're extremely violent towards outsiders.
If you can find a way to get to this island, you may never come back.
This is what happened in 1863 when the 86 passengers and 20 crew members of the Indian merchant ship, the Nineveh, unintentionally became the first reported trespassers on North Centennial Island. Here, the castaways huddled for 2 days, unbothered. However, by the third day, the Sentinelese made both their presence and their discontent with the uninvited guests perfectly clear when they started firing the bows and arrows at the outsiders. Thankfully, before things escalated any further, a Royal Navy vessel came to the shipwreck survivors' rescue. During the mission, the British declared Sentinel Island part of Britain's colonial holdings, a decision that didn't impact the Sentinelese until 1880. When Royal Navy officer Maurice Vidal Portman took control of the Andaman and Nicobar colony, and he and a team began visiting the island. Maurice became infamous for his bizarre obsession with the tribal people that involved him kidnapping the tribespeople under the guise of integrating them into civilized society, while in actuality posing them in nude photographs and exposing them to disease. During Maurice and his men's first visit to the island, Sentinelese hid from the intruders. However, during the second, the colonizers spooked the islanders, who then reacted violently. A scuffle ensued, during which the outsiders were able to capture an elderly couple and 4 children and bring them back to Port Blair. However, sickness soon took hold of the kidnapped Sentinelese islanders, and their conditions rapidly deteriorated. The elderly couple passed away, and the children were dropped off back on the island with gifts and possibly contagious illness. This expedition was not a success. Maurice wrote about the encounter. We cannot be said to have done anything more than increase their general terror of and hostility to all comers. It would have been better to have left the islanders alone, and it appeared the naval officer was correct. This kidnapping did seem to leave the Sentinelese with a lasting impression of outsiders, feelings they made clear when an escaped convict washed ashore in 1896, and a colonial search party found him a few days later, pierced with arrows. Their message was received loud and clear, and the Sentinelese were left alone, for some time at least. In fact, it was after India gained independence in 1947 that a law was put in place in 1956 to ban travel within 5 nautical miles of the island. However, in the 1960s, contact was made again, this time in the name of science. This mission, which involved a group of anthropologists, along with armed guards, was led by anthropologist T.N. Pandit, who recalled his first visit to the island to Indian publication, Down to Earth. The tribespeople were on the beach, watching the boat come to the island. There was a large number of them, but there was no reaction or resentment from them, he told the news source. The team of anthropologists and guards were even able to walk a kilometer into the forest and into their camp of 18 small huts, with little fires burning in front of each, as the Sentinelese hid. The team left presents, including bolts of cloth, candy, and plastic buckets. But despite anthropologists' protests, the naval officers and Indian police took baskets and weapons from the huts. TN and his colleagues continued their visits for 25 years, which mostly involved going to the island by dinghy, dropping off gifts, and beelining it out of there, as bows and arrows remained fixed in their direction. But while the Sentinelese tolerated these gift-giving expeditions, and even seemed to appreciate the coconuts and metal pots and pans the anthropologists left them, they remained wary of strangers. For example, when a National Geographic film crew accompanied the team of anthropologists on a trip to the island in 1974, their efforts to document the tribe from a dangerously close vantage point.
Is this a first step towards understanding a tribe never before seen by outside eyes?
Were ultimately cut short by the tribe.
A member of our film unit was wounded by one of the many arrows, each 2.5 meters long. He will carry this scar till his death.
And when exiled King Leopold III of Belgium attempted to visit the island the next year, the Sentinelese aimed their arrows in the direction of his boat, a reaction that left Leopold overjoyed and describing the encounter as the best day of his life. Then there was what occurred in 1981, when a cargo ship called the Primrose, navigating through rough seas, ended up crashing into a reef. The fate of the vessel was eerily similar to what had happened to the Nineveh over 100 years earlier, as was the run-in the 28 crew members had with the Sentinelese. From the boat, they could see a nearby island, where a group of people emerged from the forest with bows and arrows. Wild men, estimate more than 50, carrying various homemade weapons, are making 2 or 3 wooden boats. The captain of the ship radioed to his headquarters in Hong Kong, worrying they will board us at sunset. All crew members' lives not guaranteed. For 3 days, they waited for help. In the meantime, fashioning their own weapons and shooting flares in anticipation of an attack from the Sentinelese. However, the same stormy weather that caused the wreck prevented the tribe from swimming to the boat or hitting their targets. By the 3rd day, an Indian ship came to the rescue of the sailors. As for the Primrose, well, the wreckage still exists just off of the island. That same year, T.N. Pandit and his team's sporadic visits to the island rose to twice a month. And by 1991, something in the demeanor of the Sentinelese shifted, as they came out to greet the anthropologists without weapons and collected the gifts themselves. Later that day, the team returned to the island, and one male tribesperson raised a bow to them, but a woman pushed the bow down. He then dropped the bow and arrow, and, perhaps in an act of trust, buried them in the sand. They then went to the boats to collect their coconuts. However, even the anthropologists weren't welcome for long. In a following visit, one tribesman signaled with a blade and a cutting motion that it was time for them to leave. And while this trick might not fly in most circumstances when guests overstayed their welcome, T.N. took the hint and immediately called for the boat and made a quick retreat. In 1996, the Indian government suspended these visits. However, despite the distance that had been kept with the Sentinelese since then, outsiders have still had their occasional run-ins with the tribe. For example, after the 2004 tsunami, helicopters flew over the island to check on its inhabitants. The tribe firing arrows and spears towards their crafts was all the evidence the Indian government needed to know the Sentinelese had fared all right in the natural disaster. And then there was the tragedy in 2006, when 2 crab fishermen fell asleep on their boat and drifted onto the shore of Sentinel Island.
They were met with a grisly end. They didn't make it.
When a helicopter came to retrieve the remains of the fishermen, the tribe fired arrows at the aircraft. The Sentinelese buried the men on the beach, and a week later dug them out and stood them up by tying them to lengths of bamboo. The Indian government's current approach to North Sentinel Island is classified as hands-off, eyes-on. This means that every few months, boats approach the island as a sort of welfare check on the tribe, without coming in contact with them. While the exact population of the Sentinelese remains unknown, it does appear to be declining, as this makes all the more important that outsiders keep their distance and don't fish in their waters. It's likely North Sentinel Island's isolationist stance that's allowed the Sentinelese to persevere while disease, intermarriage, and migration devastated similar populations in the Andamans.
We know from statistics that when you contact tribes like this, 2/3 of the population die after 2 years. So it's not contact, it's genocide.
And given the tribe's personal experience with outside intervention, their distrust of strangers can be seen as justified.
They've had unfortunate encounters with the outside world before. They have reason for hostility.
Unfortunately, the crimson-splattered history of the Sentinelese did nothing to dissuade John Chow. Despite studying sports medicine at Oral Roberts University, John's dream of visiting North Sentinel never died. After all, from his perspective, the Sentinelese were a group of people all but untouched by civilization, and in turn, doomed to damnation unless he stepped in. So instead of pursuing a career in science, he opted for the path that could turn his dream into a reality and became an adventure blogger and missionary. John even accumulated an impressive 17,000 followers on Instagram by posting about travels.
Here we are, hiking out.
Yet, from prolicious journeys into the wilderness to the 3 summers he spent living in a cabin in Whiskeytown National Recreation Area in California, where he was once hospitalized for a rattlesnake bite, no brush with his own mortality rid John of his obsession with North Sentinel Island. And why would it? The missionaries he idolized were often tragic figures. In fact, one missionary John had the habit of quoting on Facebook was Jim Elliot, a man who was part of a proud history amongst certain Christians after losing his life to a tribe in eastern Ecuador in 1956.
We say this is a tragedy, but God uses this to build his church. And guess what? The leader of that tribe, Ephraim, came to Christ after that incident. It's very dangerous if you go into these areas, but also very fruitful because many people in those areas, once they hear the gospel, will come to Christ. They're very receptive.
But this isn't to say John set out to martyr himself. No, John wanted his mission to be a success, so much that he was under the impression that he would live amongst the Sentinelese for years and learn their language. He planned accordingly for this outcome, visiting the Andaman Islands 4 times between 2015 and 2016, avoiding forming any romantic entanglements and studying anthropology, linguistics, and emergency medicine. In 2017, he trained with All Nations, a group that encourages missionaries to adopt a wartime mentality and make strategic decisions in the battle we're waging against a real enemy. All Nations International Executive Leader Mary Ho described John to the New York Times as one of the best participants in this experience that they had ever had. In an interview with the Washington Post, she elaborated on John's commitment to the mission, telling the newspaper, "You could see that every decision he has made, every step he has taken since then, was driven by his desire to be among the North Sentinelese people." In October 2018, John arrived in Port Blair in the Andaman Islands, where in anticipation for his greatest adventure yet, he prepared by quarantining for 11 days, exercising, and putting together a kit with gifts, picture cards for communication, and safety supplies. His friend then arranged for 7 fishermen to take him to the island for $325. And on November 14th, they headed out under the cover of nightfall, escaping the notice of the Indian ships assigned to prevent access to the island. God himself was shielding us from the Coast Guard and Navy patrols, John wrote in his diary. They anchored near North Sentinel Island, and on the morning of November 15th, John made his first approach, kayaking the half-mile to the island. As he paddled towards the beach, tribespeople approached. Their faces were painted yellow, and they spoke a language he didn't understand. "My name is John," he yelled to them. "I love you, and Jesus loves you." The Sentinelese responded by stringing their bows. John panicked. "I picked up the fish and threw it towards them. They kept coming," he wrote in his diary. "I paddled like I had never in my life back to the boat. I felt some fear, but mainly was disappointed. They didn't accept me right away." Later that day, John made his second attempt, and this time, he actually made it onto the island. He then offered the tribe small gifts, including fish, scissors, cord, a football, and safety pins. When he got too close, the tribespeople shouted at him, but John wouldn't be so easily scared off this time. He tried to parrot what they said back to him, leading the Sentinelese to laugh and John to the conclusion that they probably were saying bad words or insulting him. John switched tactics and began singing hymns and preaching from the Bible, during which the tribe would often fall silent. But then things got tense as the islanders blocked his exit and took his kayak. A little boy then shot an arrow at John, piercing the Bible he was holding in front of his chest. "I stumbled back and I recall yelling at the kid for shooting me," John wrote. Tribe members then started chasing the missionary, and he ran back through the mangroves and into the water, swimming the half-mile back to the boat. Back on the boat and safely out of reach from the Sentinelese, John's diary still reflected his fear over the incident. "Lord, let your will be done. If you want me to get actually wounded, or even have my life taken with an arrow, then so be it," he wrote. "I think I could be more useful alive though. But to you, God, I give all the glory of whatever happens. I don't want to pass away. Would it be wiser to leave and let someone else to continue?" John questioned. "No, I don't think so." John acknowledged that while it almost seemed like certain death to stay there, he believed there was evidence of change in just 2 encounters in a single day. That night he wrote, "Watching the sunset and it's beautiful, crying a bit, wondering if it will be the last sunset I see before being in the place where the sun never sets. Lord, is this island Satan's last stronghold, where none have heard or even had the chance to hear your name?" John asked. The next morning, he composed a tentative goodbye to his family, writing, "You guys might think I'm crazy in all this, but I think it's worth it to declare Jesus to these people. Please don't be angry at them or at God if I lose my life. Rather, please live your lives as obedience to whatever He has called you to, and I'll see you again when you pass through the veil. This is not a pointless thing. The eternal lives of this tribe is at hand, and I cannot wait to see them around the throne of God worshiping in their language," as Revelation 7:9-10 states. After dawn on November 16th, John asked the fishermen to drop him off on the island alone. And while it remains a mystery what occurred during his third and final trip to North Sentinel Island, when the fishermen returned the next day, they witnessed the aftermath.
Fishermen say that they saw his body being dragged and buried. Local authorities believe that he was killed with bow and arrow.
John, like others before him, had lost his life to the Sentinelese. And according to indigenous rights advocates, it didn't look like John would receive a proper burial, at least not on his home soil.
It's incredibly dangerous for the people that would attempt to undertake the mission, and also potentially devastating again for the Sentinelese tribe.
Being so isolated, the Sentinelese don't have the immunities to sickness and disease that modern humans have, making any contact with them potentially deadly, as their encounter with Royal Navy officer Maurice Vidal Portman in 1880 proved.
Simple thing like flu make them, because they are not immune to anything.
However, action could be and was taken against those who aided in John's journey, including the fisherman, John's friend, and a local tourist guide.
India's laws prohibit unsanctioned trips to the island, and several people who allegedly helped Chow on his journey have been arrested.
As for the Sentinelese people who took John's life, well, while Indian police registered a case against unknown tribesmen, there wasn't a lot that could be done.
Authorities won't be sending anyone on shore to question this endangered tribe. That's just too risky for everyone involved.
When the police peered out of binoculars at the island, they noticed the tribe huddled around an area on the beach and theorized they were possibly guarding the remains of John. This case is the strangest and toughest in my life, Police Chief Dipender Patrak told the New York Times. We are trying to enter into another civilization's world. But since the US government didn't pursue sanctions, the tribe was never charged for taking John's life, and search efforts were soon called off. And when it came to John's family, they respected their son's final wishes to not blame the inhabitants of North Sentinel Island. On Instagram, Chow's family wrote that John loved God, life, helping those in need, and had nothing but love for the Sentinelese people. We forgive those reportedly responsible for his passing. The family also pleaded for the release of those who helped him illegally reach the island, writing that John acted on his own free will and his local contacts need not be persecuted for his own actions. But along with the ethical conundrums John's visit to North Sentinel Island stirred, came responses pointed in all directions. Many believe that John received the fate he deserved. After all, the missionary had been given countless lessons on the potential dangers of this trip from friends, family, and locals.
This was a journey American missionary John Chow was warned against taking.
He was well aware of North Sentinel Island's history.
And yet he decided to take his boat there and go just in front of them. So he invited that aggression.
And even the Sentinelese had seemingly attempted to steer him away before taking his life.
They've made it extremely clear that they didn't want contact. They've made it clear for decades. They made it extremely clear to John himself when the first 2 attempts he made to go to the island, they basically sent him away, and yet he went back.
For these reasons and more, the public was mainly unsympathetic to John's passing.
Now this is exactly how colonization happens, and if he just left his religion to himself, none of this would have happened, and he would still be alive today.
When John Cho tried to tell everybody about Jesus on the island, they told him about their arrows and buried him in the sand.
All I'm saying is natural selection at this point.
However, not everyone saw John's trip to North Sentinel as foolish.
Group that sent missionary John Chow to a remote Indian island is defending his strategy in trying to reach the isolated people group.
Yep, according to All Nations, John's presence on the island wasn't intended to expose the Sentinelese to illness, but to potentially cure them.
But we are actually in a different time of advanced medicine and antibiotics, and I think a lot of modern medicine may be able to help the local population in some of the health issues. We just don't know.
And they applauded his efforts.
He wanted to share the love of God with them. That was his whole mission.
But while certain members of the Christian community stood by John's mission,
he was a young man who just wanted the people of North Sentinel Island to know Christ. And for that, he paid with his life.
Not everyone was in agreement that John was a martyr for the cause. Justin Graves, a pastor and friend John made while attending linguistic school in Canada, put the blame on evangelical culture that led John to want to save the Sentinelese. In a Facebook post, he wrote, "John Chow was a good man. He was a loving, passionate individual I was blessed to befriend, and the loss of his light on this earth was devastating. But it cannot be left as a mere tragedy. His passing brings to light a multitude of issues with evangelical views and hell-based ethics. But perhaps none were as critical of religion's part in John's passing as his own father, Dr. Patrick Chow. According to John's father, his son was an innocent child whose worldview became rationalized by religious extremism. If you have anything positive to say about religion, I wish not to see or hear," he told a journalist at The Guardian after his son's passing. However, licensed professional counselor of mental health and YouTuber Dr. Todd Grande's analysis of John Chow suggested the missionary's actions weren't purely driven by the belief he could save the souls of the Sentinelese people, but also by a desire to fulfill his excitement-seeking tendencies.
This is a good example of somebody misinterpreting Christian values. Perhaps John Allen Chow found what he wanted to find in the Bible and from other sources, and not what was really there. He wanted to believe there was a sense of urgency to infringe on these people's rights. He was going to find a higher purpose, even if he had to get it.
When informed that the Sentinelese had taken the life of an American missionary, anthropologist T.N. Pandit was saddened, but did not see the tribe as the aggressors in this situation. Sentinelese are a peace-loving people. They don't seek to attack people. They don't visit nearby areas and cause trouble. This is a rare incident, he told the BBC. We should respect their wish to be left alone. And perhaps after John Chow's passing, we finally will. From the beginning, John Chow knew friends, family, and even the public would disapprove of his mission to North Sentinel Island. Yet, holding strong to his convictions, he made the journey anyway.
When we go out in our world, there are people that will just come and oppose us, and they'll have questions, and they'll have arguments. We need to know what we believe and why we believe it.
And in the end, John's unwillingness to heed the warnings passed down by history didn't just cost him a $325 boat ride to the island, but his life. As it seems, what the Sentinelese wanted wasn't Jesus, but simply to be left alone.
It's really important that people respect the rights of uncontacted tribes to not have contact.
Sentinelese don't want to have anything to do with us. Are they right? Is the Stone Age preferable to the nuclear age?
They, I think, are the very, very precious citizens of our country. And we should respect their, their freedom. We should respect their rights. We should respect their life also.
This is the story of John Allen Chow, the American missionary who lost his life attempting to save a tribe that didn't need saving.